Letitia, pleased to meet you, and welcome to Ezeko's Egyptian collection.
Thanks, I'm really excited to hear all about it. Which part of the room do we start first?
You know, I actually think I must tell you where it actually comes from. There you can see Sir Flinders Petrie, and most of what you see here actually brought here by Sir Flinders Petrie, but more than 100 years ago already. Okay. And then there was also another archaeologist, Guy Brunton, and by 1929 he also added on to this collection.
Oh, right.
Yes, people also always want to know, you know, where did you get this from?
Yeah, where did it come from?
Yeah. Yes, but of course that was when South Africa was still part of the British Empire.
Okay.
And these things were brought here.
Okay.
Then, if you think of Egypt, you always think of Tutankhamen, of course.
Yes, of course.
And this is what the northern wall of Tutankhamun's tomb looked like, where you can see him approaching Osiris, some people would like to pronounce his name, and he's actually on his way to the afterlife. You can see in the background the beautiful hieroglyphics. This is the type of hieroglyphics that they used on buildings and inside the temples. You will see it is done in vertical columns.
Oh, so it's written down?
Yes, down, from top to bottom. They did write across the page as well, horizontal lines from left to right and right to left, but because this was on a building, on the wall, it was done from top to bottom. Yes. Okay. And where you see certain symbols being surrounded by an oval, you will have the royal name inside.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and there are certain symbols that people will often recognize. The famous Ankh sign, you see it over there, the sign for life. You can see the different gods carrying it in their hands. And then you will see the scarab here, the dung beetle. You can also see it over there, the dung beetle. That is the symbol of resurrection. It was supposed to accompany the dead pharaoh from his first life to the afterlife, and also would help the sun to rise and push the sun across the sky every day from east to west. I think nowadays we think it's got something to do with the movement of planets. So yes, this is the northern wall then of Tutankhamun's burial chamber. What is also interesting, if you look here, you will see that there are some symbols. You find it over there, and you'll see it over there, and you see it over there as well. Now, Egypt was actually made up of two kingdoms, Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. And if you see the sign of the Egyptian cobra, that would be for Lower Egypt.
Oh, because you can actually see, I can actually see the formation of a cobra.
Yeah.
Leaning up. Oh, okay.
And if you see the symbol of a vulture, it is the symbol of Upper Egypt. And of course, in the case of Tutankhamun, if you look at him on his death mask, for instance, you will see both, because then it means that he was the pharaoh of the United Kingdom.
Oh, so in entirety.
Yeah, and that helps always, if you find something like that, it actually helps to date the artifact, of course.
That's an interesting little thing I'll look out for now.
Yes, and our dear friend Osiris, and on that side he's repeated over here, sitting on his throne, balanced on a lotus flower, and he's holding the two symbols of power over the people. The crook, like a shepherd's crook, and the flail, you know, like a whip. Yeah, and his two sisters standing behind him, and one of them being the famous Isis, of course. People usually know the name of Isis. Yes. This is quite an interesting story. You know, like a pharaoh died. He was a god. He came down to earth and he ruled as a pharaoh. Yeah. And when he died, he had to go back to the gods, of course taking all his belongings with him. But it wasn't as straightforward as that. He first had to, then you have a giraffe.
Oh.
And then to go with the river and the Nile, you have a hippopotamus bottom there. This, of course, is Anubis again. Now, everything that's happening here is written down by Thoth. He was the god of the arts. According to the ancient Egyptians, he actually invented writing. But he's got the head of an ibis bird. It's quite familiar to South Africa. I live close to a vlei and there are many ibis birds there. Beautiful white birds with yellow beaks.
Yes.
Now, so he's writing everything down. Now, it seems to me that Pharaoh and that Pharaoh is the same person. So it seems to me that he actually passed this test.
Oh, and then he goes through. Oh, so he's
Yeah,
obviously lighter than the feather.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the
good.
heart, in the clay pot.
Yeah.
And now Horus has taken over, and Horus is showing him the way to where the mighty Osiris is sitting on his throne.
Okay.
Now he had the final say. So even if Unifer passed this test, even then Osiris could still say, no, I don't think that you were a good pharaoh. But in the case of this pharaoh, if you stand a little bit back and you look at the entire picture, you will find him up there. So he's ready to join the gods in heaven. So
he must have passed that test.
he passed that test as
knows
well.
okay.
Yeah. But what is, you know, when you speak to people about the mummification process, they will often tell you that they removed his heart. But of course not, because now they needed the heart for this weighing of the heart assessment. So that's what they did not remove.
Yeah.
Now, if you think of what did they remove, then we can go back to this window over here. When a body of a pharaoh was mummified, and you must just remember it's about 5% of the population that was mummified, but
only the pharaohs.
Only the pharaohs, but they mummified millions of animals.
Oh, really?
Yes. So when people come to this museum, they will always tell you, oh, show me the mummy. But then we talk about mummies of animals and not mummies of people, because we don't have here in Cape Town a mummy of a person, as far as I know. Now, when they mummified, they would take the body to the workshops at the cemeteries, and there the craftsmen, maybe we shall call them doctors nowadays, they were actually waiting for the body, and then they would wash the body down, put a hook up through the nose to remove the brain, and then...
I'm getting cold shivers just listening to you.
Of course. And then they would operate on the tummy to remove the lungs and the liver and the intestines and the stomach.
Okay.
And those then were put in special jars, but you need 4 jars. We call those canopic jars.
Oh, so there's the jars.
Yeah, but we only have 2 of the 4 because the South Africans actually helped the British to do excavations. It was actually their excavation. So whenever they got hold of duplicate material, it was given to the South Africans. So I guess then they didn't find a full set as a duplicate. But what is quite interesting, and you can also tell it from that picture over there, no, not exactly, but the lids of these canopic jars actually look different. You have one with a head of a falcon, and in there they keep the intestines. This one is a human-headed jar, and in there they kept the liver. And then there were 2 more with a head of a baboon, in which the lungs would go, and then there was a jackal-headed lid as well, and that was for the stomach. Now the trick question is it still inside there? And they used the salt because it would sterilize and it would dehydrate. So it was done in the same way. This is part of a reed coffin, because, you know, maybe this was for an ordinary person, I don't know, but that is part of a painted mummy case. But you will see lots of clay pots.
I can see lots of.
Yeah, ceramics actually is quite important if you find that, if it's found by an archaeologist,
yeah.
because it helps to date. It's the best thing that you can use to date a specific site.
Does that keep its
yeah.
sort of original state?
And also, can you see the little table here with pallets? Now, you can see a picture of a pallet here as well, a slate pallet. That's what they use to mix the makeup. And there are little makeup pots there as well. And the thing is, makeup was more like an ointment for male, female, adults and children.
Also in Egypt,
because you see, they had a problem with flies. I believe that they have it today still. And the flies would go and lay their eggs inside the eyelids and cause blindness. So they would put that makeup around the eyes to keep the flies away. Yes. You will see a piece of jewelry there as well, and a bone bracelet. And those black poles that you see over there and also at the back, it's actually part of a bed. So yes, furniture like the table and the bed was also buried with people. And then right at the back there you can see a piece of a basket.
Oh, I can see the reed-looking thing.
Yeah, like the reed. That was for fresh fruit for the journey. People always tell you, you know, when they buried the Pharaoh, when he died, they killed all his slaves. Could have been for a short period, but what they would rather do was to make those statues that you see there, those are ushaptis.
Okay.
So it's statues of slaves that they made to bury with the pharaoh.
Oh, okay.
I've read that when they discovered the one pharaoh's tomb, they actually found 3,200 ushaptis in his tomb. So they just believed that those would become real people in the afterlife, and they would serve the pharaoh. Yes. This, for instance, is a plough that was also found in a tomb. So this would become a real plough. Those would be real people, and they would plough the fields of the pharaoh. There are more statues of gods. Our dear friend Osiris, you know, with the crook and the flail is there. There was a god that looked like a hippopotamus, believed to relieve the pain of women in childbirth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then there's one that looked like a lion, one that looked like a cat, and there is Apis, the sacred bull of Memphis. Memphis used to be one of the previous capitals of Egypt before Cairo. There's the bar bird, which was like the soul of the deceased. And there's the house of the soul. And if you look right inside, you might see an ox and a snake. If we look right at the bottom, this is a stone fragment with beautiful clear hieroglyphics, and it came off the back of a statue. But you see something there at the bottom that looks like a circle, and that symbolizes the sun. Then just above it, there's something that goes like this. That is water, probably referring to the Nile. And to the left, you see the Ankh sign that I referred to previously.
We saw that earlier.
Yes. So if you read the three there together, it can be something like living in Egypt. And just above that, you see a sedge reed plant, of course very familiar to the Nile, and then to the right there's a bee as well. And the sedge reed plant and the bee is very similar to the cobra and the vulture, also referring to Upper and Lower Egypt. So that is about somebody who lived in Egypt. But of course we can't read the whole thing because it just came off the back of a statue.
Okay.
The ointment jar again, and then the stone stele with hieroglyphic inscription. Yeah, this is also quite one of our valuable artifacts, our valuable pieces. Yes. Now, of course, nowadays we know more or less how to read hieroglyphics because of the Rosetta Stone. Now, the real one, the original, you'll find in the British Museum in London. And when it was discovered at a place called Rashid in Egypt, nowadays they refer to it as Rosetta, the real one was about 12 inches bigger. But if you look at it, you can actually see 3 different sections here. But the interesting thing is it's only 2 languages. This is ancient Greek. And when it was discovered by Napoleon's men, they took it back with them to France. And there was Jean-François Champollion, who could read ancient Greek. And then he, together with other scholars, they had a look at the whole Rosetta Stone, and they just guessed that this and this is the same script, the same language, just 2 different scripts. So if we think in our context, this would be print, and this would be cursive. In the small passage, you know, if they mummified a pharaoh, it took 70 days, and then eventually you would have this white wrapped figure. And onto that, they would put amulets or charms to keep your evil spirits away. Now, there are some amulets over there, and then came the jewelry. On the body, and eventually, yeah, there you can actually see beads, you know, like a necklace, and eventually they would put the death mask. Unfortunately, the light is out here. I don't know if this is going to be a good picture, but you will see that if you look at this death mask, you know, death mask was supposed to cover your head and your shoulders and be a spitting image of the face, and here the cobra and the vulture is missing because this was for a chief general, but it's got the beard. Now, if you think of Tutankhamen, he became the pharaoh between the ages of 10, 11 or 12. He wouldn't have had a beard, so they made him a wooden one that they would glue to the chin. And even if it was a woman who was a pharaoh, like the famous Hatshepsut, she also had to wear the glue the wooden one to her chin on specific occasions.
Not the best for skin.
No,
Okay.
but
Wow.
yeah.
Sure, you've given me given all of us a massive insight into all of the culture and the history. That's been fascinating.
Yes, I don't know if I can just show you. You will see on some of the objects it will say replica. But very few. Otherwise, you've now looked at original artifacts. Yes. The original of Nefertiti, of course, is in Berlin, so that is a copy.
Okay.
Yeah. And, you know, people are always very worried about the shape of these 2 busts.
I was looking at the odd...
Yeah, but just remember it's incomplete. So just imagine now Tutankhamen passed away, they wanted to bury him, they didn't expect him to die because he was so young still, and now they had to finish these things, but there wasn't time, so they just took the unfinished product or the incomplete product and just put it or buried it with them. So this is mostly what this room is about, but you know, although some of these things, they might look small, they might not look that impressive, it is still very valuable.
I think it's you and your knowledge and explaining everything, because I walked through here bit earlier, and I thought, oh, there's not much in here. And now I've spent the last hour with you, and it's absolutely fascinating.
Yes, definitely.
To understand the history and the culture behind each little article and the story makes it really sort of interesting, and you understand it better.
And we're so thankful to the archaeologists who actually donated these things to the museum.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Well, lovely to meet you, and thank you so much for
Pleasure.
your time. Greatly appreciated. This brings us to the end of another exciting episode. Please keep watching on another exciting episode on Inside Africa. I remain your host, Charlene Miles.